What is Northern Powerhouse Rail? It's a question that I'm sure a lot of people have asked, even those who try their best to follow rail news and developments closely. At its core is a proposal to provide a new link in the north from east to west, from Liverpool to Manchester and across the Pennines. A proposal that was promoted by Transport for the North and later adapted as part of the integrated rail plan. That simple idea has turned out to be quite complicated, so this video will be split into two parts. I'll only be covering the section currently being discussed as most likely to be delivered, but there was also supposed to be a new tunnel from Manchester to Marsden, and a new through station for Bradford. The complexity has arisen as it seems the will of regional politicians is at odds with what central government wants or is willing to deliver. However, while Northern Powerhouse Rail and the recently proposed Liverpool and Manchester Railway may look different, they are dependent largely on the same proposal. But to understand the what and the where, we need to go back to 2021, when the integrated rail plan was released, and alterations were made to the plans for HS2 between Crewe and Manchester. This is when the government first explicitly committed to the proposal to build a new east-west railway, which had been talked about for a number of years. And it is when NPR and HS2 became inextricably linked. The premise seemed quite simple, and to some extent fairly pragmatic, and that was to use part of the HS2 infrastructure for the new NPR route. This would maximise the benefits of the section of HS2 between Highley and Manchester, and would mean the most expensive bit of NPR could be delivered within the HS2 budget. To do this, the plans for HS2 were amended to include infrastructure that would allow NPR trains to use the section of HS2. This would require the inclusion of provision to build a new bridge for the NPR tracks over the Goulburn link that would have taken HS2 trains north to Wigan, and provision for an additional grade separated junction that would allow trains from Liverpool to join HS2 between Highley and Millington and head towards Manchester. A further south-facing junction would also have allowed trains from Liverpool to London to join HS2 north of Crewe, rather than using the existing West Coast Main Line via Runcorn to reach HS2 south of Crewe. If delivered, this would have created a series of junctions comparable in complexity to Delta Junction in the West Midlands. If anyone has been following the HS2 or NPR debate closely, then I'm sure you would have heard of Highley by now, which, despite merely being a small village to the southwest of Manchester, has become central to the plans to resurrect the cancelled section of HS2 between Crewe and Manchester. But technically it should be Highley and Millington. The junctions were to be located close to the villages, and it is where the NPR infrastructure would merge with the HS2 tracks. The route east to Manchester via the airport and the tunnel to Piccadilly remained largely unchanged, and this section would have been used by HS2 and NPR trains. A further amendment was however made to the station approach, which would have provided provision for a link to head east from the new Piccadilly HS2 station to the proposed tunnel to Marsden. This has become a serious point of contention, which I'll explain in more detail in part 2. The route heading west from Highley would have used a mix of new and existing infrastructure. No official route was ever made public, but there are only a handful of logical route options for the required new section of railway from Highley to Thelwall, where the new section would meet an existing but closed railway. From the information available, it appears as though NPR would use the closed section of the Skelton Junction to Ditton Junction line, which includes the high-level bridge over the Manchester Ship Canal. Although it is not clear if the existing bridge could be used, or would need to be heavily modified or rebuilt. From there, the line would use the section of the existing railway that was most recently used for coal trains to Fiddler's Ferry power station, which ceased operation in 2020. The route would continue under Warrington Bank Quay, where a new low-level station would be constructed. From there, the railway heads west to Widnes, where it connects with the West Coast Main Line. So, the only logical route under the integrated rail plan option was for MPR trains to use the existing West Coast Main Line from Lime Street to Widnes, the closed freight line to Thelwall, and a short section of new railway from Thelwall to High Lee. Given the information available, I think this is a fairly accurate guess as to what the route would have looked like. It wasn't the best plan by any means, and people have been debating its merits and what they see as failings ever since the publication of the IRP. But, as the adage goes, perfect is the enemy of good, and in my opinion, this was a reasonable compromise that had the best chance of being delivered. The plan has also largely been adopted by the Liverpool and Manchester Railway Board, led by Steve Rotherham and Andy Burnham, who are developing their own proposals for a new link. But importantly, LMR still relies on the cancelled section of HS2 from High Lee to Manchester, including the 12.9km long tunnel from Manchester Airport to Ardwick. LMR also seems to rely on the existing railway alignment through Warrington, which would require a new section of railway from Thelwall to High Lee. But LMR say they are looking at ways to provide a dedicated link to Liverpool, which may include a new station. But this seems to be more of an ambition rather than a crucial or deliverable element of LMR, and it's not clear how this would be funded. The board also strongly disagrees about how Manchester should be served, which I'll discuss more in the next video. The current proposals are far from perfect, and some serious concerns have arisen, especially since the cancellation of HS2, which means the cost of the 13km tunnel must now be borne by LMR or NPR. There are also concerns about using the part of the existing alignment, which meanders through Warrington and which can't easily be realigned to increase the line speed. This indirect route and use of an existing railway alignment means that trains would still take around 35 minutes to reach Manchester from Liverpool. But, as I'll explain in the next video, the new route should not be promoted on the basis of journey times. I'll also talk more about some of the other problems and the route into Manchester, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video.